It is impossible for words to describe what is necessary to those who do not know what horror means. Horror has a face, and you must make a friend of horror. Horror and moral terror are your friends. If they are not, then they are enemies to be feared. They are truly enemies. It's no secret that Apocalypse Now is my favorite film of all time. And Kurtz's monologue on horror, for those of you that know, it was based on a book, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, a journey into the darker reaches of the human soul. It is arguably one of the greatest films ever put together. And if you have not seen it, I recommend that you do, if for no other reason than Brando portraying Colonel Walter Kurtz and that monologue on horror. There is so much truth in that monologue, which is odd because it basically was just Brando ranting with a head full of acid, 20 pounds overweight, and never having read the book. But it was a magnificent piece of cinematic truth that was spoken, the entire monologue. And that is at the core of it. It is impossible for words to describe what is necessary to those who do not know what horror means. We in the West are strangers to horror. And that comfort, while it makes us all nice and cozy for the moment, will ultimately work to our detriment when we take an honest and unflinching look at the world around us and what is going on. This was a tweet this week that came across my feed. When you realize that for so long, the two most profitable enterprises on the planet have been war and illness, it's not hard to understand where this is all going. Now, I would hardly call the scamdemic horror in any true sense of the word, but the egregious overreaches of power that it enabled border on showing us some of the horrors to come. And the wars that are raging now and the ones that are on the horizon will truly show us a face of horror, the likes of which most of us have never seen. Sadly, it will be filtered through the lenses of the ministry of truth, and it will be up to us as critical thinkers to discern and decipher what the truth of that horror is. Independent of politics, usually, but the left has completely lost their mind. This was another tweet that came across my feed. Does anyone remember when the US government invaded Baghdad, killed 500,000 people, then awarded Halliburton with $39.5 billion for the reconstruction of Iraq? I remember. We all remember. And we all remember how the politically correct left quite correctly reacted to such a thing. It was war profiteering, nothing more. And they quite correctly called it out in spite of the best efforts of the Ministry of Truth for the Bush junta. But now it's as if they've completely forgotten. Now that there is a Democrat, one of their own in the White House, a member of their own regime controlling the show, the exact same phenomenon is taking place. War profiteering driven by horror, and yet not a peep. How easily one team or the other can be misled, how easily we can be tricked into engaging in Orwellian doublethink. Now, this picture says more than 1,000 words could. Rockets coming in from Gaza and the Iron Dome over Tel Aviv. Well, Both of these are funded by your tax dollars. And the horror on the ground that we have witnessed over the past 2 weeks, independent of whether you stand with this or sympathize with that, the horror on the ground is reflective of the true nature of war, and you are paying for it without consent. Still hasn't been enough to get some people on board. I mean, maybe what we're waiting for here is, well, another one of these. Sorry, couldn't help but drop Alex Jones in the mix. Because they're putting chemicals in the water to turn the freaking frogs gay. I digress. Horror on the ground, and how easily we are misled by the ministry of so called truth. Israel, in an act of war criminality, bombed a hospital in Gaza, leveled the hospital, and killed hundreds of people. This is the hospital after the blast. We were told that the hospital was hit by a J dam. You see that the majority of the structure is still standing, and there is no characteristic blast crater as would be indicated by the use of an Israeli and American supplied Israeli J dam. The body count wasn't anywhere near what we were told, but the Ministry of Truth, they took it and they ran with it. They obviously had one side or the other in mind to support their narrative. Remember your Orwell. They never stated or implied that a forgery was committed. Always the reference was to slips, errors, misprints, or misquotations, which it was necessary to put right in the interest of accuracy. No such accuracy was even attempted. It was naked propaganda to demonize Hamas and the residents of Gaza. But here's the importance of the word however. This hospital strike turned out to be a Hamas rocket. Anything to the contrary has been thoroughly debunked. So that story will stand on its own as a complete lie and propaganda forgery. That does not, however, take away from very, very real instances of Israelis using, again, American supplied white phosphorus over Gaza and the occupied territories. Now, I have no sympathy for Hamas, and I certainly have no allegiance to or love for radical Islam. Scorch the earth, eliminate every last one of them. We should have finished the job in the days of the Crusades. However, the enemy of my enemy is not necessarily my friend when they can rain fire on people. Again, touching back to my favorite film and part of that monologue, we train young men to drop fire on people, but their commanders won't allow them to write fuck on their aeroplanes because it's obscene. See the film, people. I'm saying, see the film. U.S. supplies white phosphorus to Israel. Israel has used white phosphorus against civilian targets in Gaza. One must also take into account that the reason why those civilian targets keep getting hit is because Hamas uses the human shield principle and launches missiles against Israel from civilian areas. Israel has also responded to those attacks with U.S. supplied cluster bombs, cluster munitions. You should do a deep dive on that. Imagine 3 football fields worth of flying shrapnel and raining death. The effects on the ground are truly horror. When this guy was allegedly using them in the Donbass region, and further, when he allegedly used them against other territories to the east against Ukrainians, we were told he was a war criminal. And then the same United States war machine that supplied the cluster munitions to Israel supplied them to their new favorite pony in the race. That's right, the sawed-off, coked-up clown shoe running the show in Ukraine, Zelensky, allegedly a Jew. But I digress. there are more than enough lies to go around. But if we're going to stand with Israel, let's not forget to take a look at Revelation 3:9, particularly for all you evangelical Christians. We went over this a bit on the Monday when I did my initial rant on it. Behold, I will make of them a synagogue of Satan, which say that they are Jews but are not, and do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. A reminder from Ephesians, whether it's the lies that we are fed by the media, or the enemies that are real, or the enemies that we have been falsely convinced are real, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. The heavenly places? You mean like the Holy Land? Why, it's almost as if the contested territory around Jerusalem has seen this sort of thing before. The scriptures remind us, in keeping with the true nature of horror, in the book of Mark, chapter 13, see these mighty buildings, all shall be thrown down, shattered, splintered, split. The earth will shake, rattle, and roll. The masses will go hungry, their bellies bloat. These are but the birth pangs, and but their days be numbered. No flesh shall be spared. Now, in the mercy of God, it says that for the sake of the elect, he will have shortened the days. But in the meantime, you can expect to see horror. And that horror will be rooted in fear, and that horror will be rooted in deception. Bringing me back to the words of the fictional character Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now. There is nothing that I detest more than the stench of lies. As for me, I would rather look horror in the face for all its horrific nature, for all its evil, for all its darkness, than to give in to a comfortable lie meant only to deceive, mislead, and disengage the people from the work that is to be done. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors. And now that I have another one, I cannot stress this enough. Certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to stretch open that maw and choke you with a big fat dose of truth cock. Saddle up, ladies and gentlemen. It is time once again for the Sunday sermon. I'm going to have to take a roll call real quick. I'm hoping that the Wi-Fi connection is stable enough to at least deliver what's going on. In the meantime, everybody in for the drum roll. Here we go. Coming hard, charging out of the starting gate as we always do, boys and girls. The bumper music, as always, from a little gut-stomping rock and roll band called Red Desert out of the smoldering embers of the once great city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. A great American band from a great American city that now stands in ruins. The Horror. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older, No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. Every week you guys get, if I've got to watch someone do that another, see how it turns out. Roll call real quick, see who we got on board. We got Roman, we got Carrie, and we're going to be doing our first, provided everything works out, we're going to be doing our first remote guest spot with Brother Roman this week. I'm looking forward to it. Roman is on board. Lovely Miss Carrie, his lovely wife, is also on board. Let's see who we got. Brother Joel and the entire cast of The Usual Suspects. Who we got? The original Sinner Sister herself, Miss Emmy, the divine Miss Emmy. Good to have you on board. Turtle, brother, been looking forward to the sermon this week. I've been looking forward to having you here for the sermon, man. Been thinking about you a lot, and I really appreciated the conversation that we had, man. And I keep you in my thoughts, I keep you in my prayers, man. Walk in strength, walk in truth, walk in light, brother. God bless you, man. God bless you. God bless you all around, and God bless you for being here, man. Thank you so much, Turtle. Brother Clem, breathe. The breathing is on point. To get through that opener, I had to do breathing exercises, man, because that was a fairly long-winded rant. So I'll go with that. Happy to have you on board, Clem. Good to see you. David McConnell, good to see you, man. Old friends, old family. Nice to have you here, brother. And of course, the deacon. I know. We're going to take issue with the actual technicality of the word deacon, but let me just go ahead and throw this at you, Mark. I'm calling you deacon. Bart has spoken, and what Bart hath ordained, let no lesser man put asunder. Uh, Mark Hensley, man. Glad to have you on board. Is the wife here? I think the wife said she was going to be checking in. Hopefully she'll make it out. Looks like we got most of the usual suspects. We're going to get rolling on this thing like pretty quick. I got a lot of stuff to get through here. I am apologetic for the fact that we couldn't get a more in-depth rant when this whole Israel-Gaza thing kicked off, but I'm going to try to make up for it a little bit this week. We're going to be going into these subjects a little more in-depth. And, of course, Ryan's Rabbit Hole coming up, which is going to provide some levity. I think you're going to enjoy it, and it's going to be some badly needed levity in light of all the other stuff. By the way, man, sound off in the comments if you have or have not seen the film Apocalypse Now. And if you have seen the film, here's a little challenge for you. If you have seen the film, I want you to comment over here in the chat with your favorite soundbite, your favorite quote from the film, your favorite moment. And it doesn't have to be Kurtz. You know, like Kurtz is my spirit animal, but it could be Kilgore, it could be Willard, it could be Lance, it could be like any of the players, it could be, Harrison Ford's character early on in the movie. Just comment. If you've seen the film, just comment with your favorite soundbite. If you haven't seen the film, comment accordingly over here, because what a magnificent piece of cinema and what a magnificent piece of truth and wisdom. Sometimes you can Emmy, that actually really surprises me. Wagner, of course, right? Yes, Ride of the Valkyries, classic scene. I'm actually surprised that Emmy hasn't seen that film, being the history buff that she is. But then again, man, maybe I could email Sabaton and tell him to do a song about it. But Emmy, yeah, I want you to see that film. If you get a chance, I want you to see the film, and when you see it, make sure that you go with the original cinematic cut and not the Redux version. Goodness. Oh, what an abortion of a film, that Redux version. Well, look, there were some scenes, again, I am no Coppola, right? And it's me slagging Coppola for that cut of the film is like me slagging Michelangelo because, David should have, the statue of David should have had a bigger cock. It's like, come on, man. I mean, entirely subjective. He's Michelangelo. I'm not. He's Francis Ford effing Coppola, and I'm not. There were scenes in the Redux version that you could say, yeah, man, it might have been cool to leave that in, but like the French plantation sequence, it's like, oh, let's just remove all the subtlety of the film. Remind me to get to the duality of God and the duality of man. In fact, I'm going to enter a little bullet point up here so I do not forget, because that's illustrated damn near perfectly in the film. I'm going to go ahead and fade that bumper music out, man. Coming to an end. Older No Wiser from the band Red Desert. And that's really, really a cool track, and that's why we keep using it. That and the fact that they're nice enough to let us use it without copyright. A couple of shout outs that I want to give right off the bat. Let's get the sponsor stuff taken care of. Of course, we have Casey and Dusty Tellison, my Viking brothers from Nordic Smoke Barbecue, Sarah Wade, Bill Wade. Oh, yes. All right. Hey, cool, man. Cool. Hey, Bill, we're having some technical difficulties too on this end. So the Wi-Fi is a little dodgy. That's what happens when you stay in like the cheapest motel possible when you're working the turnaround, because that tax-free per diem money stacks up really quick if you can cut your living expenses. So just a little thing that I do. But yes, my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison from Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Period. End of statement. Done. Yeah, but sit down, shut up. You're wrong. Nordic Smoke, the only legit barbecue. And we're coming up on Thanksgiving again, and we will continue that tradition that has gone for as long, for the entire decade that I've been living in the Pacific Northwest. They have smoked the holiday turkey every single year. They're going to be smoking holiday turkeys this year too. You want to get in on this action. Uh, you know, Kelly, my buddy Kelly from Houston, he came through. He was doing a gig over in Pullman, Washington. He came through and visited with me in Spokane. He actually got to put hands and mouth to that barbecue. And coming by way of Texas, he is now a believer. If Brother Sonny happens to make it out, he will testify. I will never forget the look on his face because he walked in with the rib and he was kind of distracted. And then he walked back out with what was left of the rib, looking at Dusty like, I would not have thought that I would have to come all the way to Spokane, Washington to get ribs this good. So anyway, long story short, they put out some badass barbecue. Check them out. They're on all social media profiles. And if you're in the Spokane area, look for them. They're doing catering gigs. They'll be rolling out with the Viking Longship, the big smoker truck. And of course, and we'll hear more from him later, Roman, one of my oldest and dearest friends. We go all the way back to 1988. Some of you guys weren't even born when Roman and I first met, but he is the top dog over at opiumtales.com, the erotic pinups and portraits people. He's doing beautiful watercolors of beautiful naked women and rolling with some testosterone driven commentary as well. So on Planet Bart, that's a trifecta. But, big shout out to Roman and to his lovely wife, Carrie, and to Allie and Roxy and the bevy of beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. And Roman is going to have the now dubious in here after we get through the rabbit hole of being the first remote guest who got on the program. I've only ever been one guest on the program, and it was Casey. Casey Tellison, when we released the Birds of a Feather, had him in studio, and we were like 10 on the dance center level of the bar there in Spokane. But now we're going to give it a shot. It's going to be an experiment. I hope you guys are going to be patient with us here, and I hope it works, because if we can make this work this time, this will be we can boost the show a little bit, a little more punch to it. And by the way, I know Roman's sitting there right now thinking he's wanting to go clickety click and say, give us a thumbs up and like and share because it boosts us in the algorithm. So I figured I'd save you the trouble of that. Yes, definitely. Whatever you can do, man. Sound is getting choppy. Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to happen. We're going to roll with it, guys. We're going to roll with it and hope if it turns into, look, I'm going to keep plowing forward with this thing until it absolutely shuts me down. And it might. We've had that happen before. You guys that have been around for a while, you know that it wouldn't be the first time that we had to shut down a sermon after like multiple attempts to get back online failed. So just stay with me and we're going to do it. All right. So first segment that we are going to get to, let me get over here to the banners. The ever popular Ryan's Rabbit Hole. And now we finally got the sound effect back on the board, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Ryan's Rabbit Hole, the thunderous roar of applause. Yes. Are you not entertained? Yes. Brother Ryan, and hopefully he'll be on board. He's got a lot of stuff going on because he's always got a lot of stuff going on. He's a hardworking guy, bro. He's a hardworking guy. But as y'all are well aware, he opened the door for me to get started on this crane journey. I would not be here in the godforsaken region of the Texas Panhandle working this turnaround and making the stellar living that I'm able to make now if it were not for the efforts of Ryan Adam Jenkins. He is like my own flesh and blood, and I love him. In any case, one of the things that we bonded over early on, Ryan and I, is that we are both repositories of useless information. Repositories, not suppositories. That's a different kind of party. We didn't show up for that. We are repositories of useless information. Our brains are just full of minutia and obscure stuff. We are murder to play a game of Trivial Pursuit with because one or the other will know a little bit of something about damn near everything. And we bonded over that early. And what the rabbit hole section is, and again, we started doing this early on in the podcast, and it became our most popular segment. So we do one every week. Every week, Ryan proposes a rabbit hole. And what it's designed to do is take you a little bit out of your comfort zone, right? To expose you to a phenomenon or a piece of history or an individual that you may never otherwise have heard of. And some weeks we go historical, some weeks we go conspiratorial, some weeks we go esoteric, and that's when Ryan really shines and really makes me work for it. I mean, I got to tell you, he hits me with stuff sometimes, and not to puff my own pecker or anything, but I'm a sharp cat. I got a lot of knowledge going on up here, and he'll hit me with stuff that is like a Tyson left hook, slipping underneath my right and just flooring me, with things. He really makes me work for it. This is not going to be one of those weeks. We're going to keep it lighthearted this week. We are going historical, and this is going to be your search term, Eugene Flucky. What? Eugene Flucky. Now, full disclosure, I had heard of Lucky Flucky, but I had not done the severe deep dive on Flucky. But Flucky is the most decorated American submarine commander in World War II. He and his crew distinguished themselves on a number of occasions. But I will let you go down that rabbit hole yourself and look at the monumental accomplishments, because I could spend easily a half hour just listing all the citations and all of the near misses and all of the actions that he took as a submarine commander, where the sheer weight of his balls were enough to be ballast for the submarine, and he basically had to discharge for the damn thing to be able to surface. Just amazing stuff. But here is the story that I do want to dip my toe in the pond and tell you about this. One of the last patrols that he did, he sent a landing party. The Japanese had a coastal railway, okay, and he sent a landing party, and he picked specific members of his crew, ones that had demolition experience, but he would only accept people on the crew for this mission that were unmarried, because he was a man of faith, and he was a man of principle, and he was a man of integrity, and he knew that he could have torpedoed it, right, but it needed to be a direct strike on this coastal railway, and he could not ensure, because unlike the Japanese, we weren't using suicide torpedoes. He sent this landing party on a mission to plant demolition charges against this coastal railway. And the mission, spoiler alert, the mission was successful. I do have a list of the selected crew members: Paul Sanders, William Hatfield, Francis Sevier, Lawrence Newland, Edward Klingensmith, James Richard, John Markison, William Walker Hatfield. They all put together this explosive charge, and they used a pressure switch under the rails to trigger it. But in the history of the Navy, and to this day, it is a record that still stands, the way that they put this mission together, I am not doing the story the proper amount of justice, but that's the purpose of the rabbit hole. I want you to go and read about Eugene Flucky, the Naval Submarine Commander. It is the first and only time in United States naval history that a submarine has been given credit for the engagement with and elimination of a land-based target, specifically a train. The only recorded submarine kill of a train in United States naval history. It's a fascinating story, and the guy's a fascinating individual. Look into the story, because the story's a little dip into the pond, but look into some of his biographical information. The guy's just a really fascinating individual, as a lot of these heroes are, guys that do things unconventionally and still manage to get it done. In the modern military, he would not have lasted, and I don't want to sound like that bitter old guy who's like, well, things are so much different and better back then, but here we are. I am that bitter, aging asshole that will just make a factual opposition. This sort of thing, and not just Flucky, but I mean, even keeping within the confines of the Navy, people like Richard Marcinko, right? Maybe rest in peace. Demo Dick, Devil of the DMZ, he would not last in the modern military. I mean, they nearly shit canned Marsenko for the stuff that he pulled under orders, infiltrating U.S. naval bases to test their security. He nearly got cut loose for that. People who think outside the box now are not wanted. And characters, and I pray the blood of Jesus on this one, unless we have a completion of the awakening and the turnaround that we see the early stages of now, we will never see such men again. There was a period in history where we would revere such men for thinking outside the box to accomplish the mission. Were there disciplinary actions? Of course there were. There always are. But we revered the men who were focused on their nation, who were focused on their men, and who were focused on the mission. And Eugene Flucky, Lucky Flucky, one of those guys. Just a fascinating individual. Do a deep dive on the biographical information, but look into the story on the railway kill, because it's hilarious, and why they haven't made just now that there's a resurgence of feel-good movies about the good old days of the American military. I think that one is like begging for a screenplay. I think it's begging for a screenplay. So, Julian, if you're out there and you happen to catch a replay of this, I know you're entrenching yourself out there in Hollywood, such as it is, and you're doing a phenomenal job out there. So when you're thinking screenplays, Eugene Flucky, look it up. Just a little poke into the bread oven. And Eugene Lucky Flucky, submarine commander, will be your rabbit hole for the week. That is Ryan's rabbit hole for the week, and I appreciate you guys coming out. Appreciate you being here. Go down that rabbit hole. Do some research. It's gonna enlighten and amuse and possibly offend in no particular order, which, again, that's all in keeping with the program and in keeping with my personality, so we're all good. This is my Substack. I will be getting back active on Substack. Currently, I am working a turnaround. If you guys know anything about shutdowns or turnarounds, again, thanks to Ryan opening the door, I was able to go on that journey and become a crane operator, which I've been doing for a few years. And I'm working a chemical plant shutdown here in a little town. I'm not going to disclose the location, but it's in the panhandle of Texas. And there is a major petrochemical company, and I will also not disclose that. But they are having a plant shutdown where they, shut down operations in various parts of the unit, and they remove and replace equipment and scrub things down and make sure everything is up to spec. Here's an interesting story before we get to the interview with Roman. There are valves out here. We'll leave it at that. There are valves out here on certain units that were made in Germany in the 1930s. They're still in operation. This is a testament to German engineering. First, that is a testament to German engineering. But I want you to ponder this and look at the subtext. There are valves on several units in this plant manufactured industrial manufacturers' markings in Germany in the 1930s. Yeah, okay, let me just get, for those of you who just really, because some of you went to public school, and I can't hold that against you, there are valves in this plant that have swastikas on them. Yeah, I want you to imagine one of these weenie weenies that are all about solar power and power and renewables and all that. Nothing wrong with any of that, but they are already like way freaking left leaning. I want you to imagine if someone could take a photograph inside one of these chemicals. This is how easily they're triggered. And I almost, I won't do it because we've got non-disclosure agreements. I can't do any photography of any kind inside the plant, but laying eyes to it and laying a camera to it are different things. I assure you, there are valves in this plant with swastikas marked on them. If a greenie weenie got their hands on that photo, oh my goodness, what a nightmare. proof positive that Nazis are alive and well and making a resurgence, and they would totally leave aside the fact that the Valve's been there since the 1930s because they have no understanding of anything. But not important anyway, just a little thing I thought I would share, being the little history dweeb that I am. It was an interesting thing. So let me get on with this real quick. I'm going to pull up the bullet points, and I'm going to show you the cover of this book, From Dork to Pimp Daddy: How to Go from Drawing Stick Figures to Being So Pimp That Beautiful Women Will Want You to Draw Them Naked. Now, I'm going to give you the bullet points as issued to me by Brother Roman. This book teaches you how to go from stick figures to beautiful nude women. Everything in the world is lines and circles, and I'll spare you the rant on sacred geometry because it's not in the bullet points. We start with hand exercises to get you to draw decent lines and circles. Then we go into drawing heads, action lines, new way to draw stick figures, and gesture drawings. The magic is in the gestures. Once you get good at these, everything else is just details. There are 2 bonus chapters in this book. Bonus chapter 1, how I met my models. And by the way, I have seen actual photographs of the models, and in a word, damn. And also Artist's Game, if you want to use your newfound art talents to meet beautiful women. See also Boudoir Photography, but he is doing watercolors, and I think that is a lot more intimate. You use those newfound talents and you got game, well, guess what? Beautiful women are going to come your way, because what is the devil's favorite sin? Pride and vanity. Yes, right. And women love to be showered with attention and to want to paint a beautiful portrait of a beautiful woman naked. That is just ultimate attention. So there's a certain amount of artist game that goes along with that, but I'm not going to belabor the point. Instead, I am going to bring on our first remote guest, dear friend of mine. We go all the way back to 1988, and I am going to let him give the breakdown of what this is about. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my brother, aka Roman Riva, because I'm not going to out him. But we got him on board. Brother, it is good to see you. It is everything coming through? Is the sound and everything okay on your end?
Yeah, it's been a little choppy, but it sounds really good right now. So knock on wood, hopefully it keeps up.
Right on. Just going to cross myself real quick, and we'll hope for the best. So, your creative endeavor when we first met back in 1988 was music, and I know that you still pursue the music. Creative spirits tend to find a creative outlet however they can do it. What was the inspiration or that moment, that line of demarcation where, because there was a drift when you went from the music and then started getting into the watercolors and the painting and stuff? What was the inspiration for that? What was the motivation behind it?
So what happened was I was doing a cartoon, and I guess I should show you this. Is you could tell still from, oh, there we go. This is Ozzy and Randy, and you can see traces of cartoonism in my artwork still to this day. But I was working on a cartoon. I tried to sell it to Hollywood. Had no success. The business person that I hired was a piece of you know what. Yeah. And it failed. But the thing is, when you learn a skill set, you have it for the rest of your life. So I am now a very good cartoonist. Right. And Allie, in 2018, I met her in 2017. 2018, I don't even remember the context, but cartooning came up. And she asked me to draw her. I think what she meant is for me to draw her as a cartoon, but if you could do cartoons, you could do realistic drawing too. It's it's not that different. So I drew her realistically, and she was floored, absolutely floored. So one thing led to another, and a few months later, I was drawing her naked, and it went from drawing to colored pencils to watercolor.
I have to ask, just a little punch in, just to ask. So how? Because it's like things were going, and suddenly she's naked. I mean, it's like there's kind of a lack of a segue there. Was there any like easing into that, or just one day she was like, "Hey, I'm really digging what you're doing with my figure. Here's my breasts." I mean, like how did that work out?
Yeah, well, kind of like that, because this is the thing is that with the beautiful woman, you know, so you could only do faces for so long before they're like, hey, do my body too.
Right.
And it was all her. It was not me. It was all her making all the moves. So
Right.
that's the whole point of like this part of the book is
Right.
whoops, if you could is the second half is how to go from drawing to being so pimped up beautiful woman and wanting you to draw them nude. It's not you asking them, it's them asking you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
that
that's serious
happens.
game. That's serious game. When you get them to initiate, that's pretty serious game. Now you have Allie, who was your first model, and then you've got Roxy, and they're like I could fish for a couple of the other names, but it's sort of a rotating cast of characters. Now, my understanding is that Allie was West Coast, yes, or was she in Texas?
California.
Okay,
Yeah.
so do you have like two separate sets of models depending on where in of course just inadvertently outed your location, so that's bad OPSEC, but you know it's not like they couldn't do the homework. Do you have like different sets of models in Texas and in California and any of the other places that you find yourself?
So Allie, Roxy, and Sophia are my California models, and I took about over 1,000 pictures of each before we moved to Texas.
Right on.
And met Katie in Dallas. So I've used her a bunch of times, and she's the #1 model in the book. So when you see a lot of news from the book, she's the main one. Then also met Celeste in California as well, and she's my tallest one. She's about 5'11". She's really tall.
There you go.
So yeah, tall and thin. And then I have one in Romania. Her name is Diana, and she is a hottie. She's actually in Italian Vogue.
Oh wow!
So she's a professional model.
She's posing naked for you as well. So this
right.
is a Vogue model actually modeling for you as well. So that's testament to the game, brother. I give you that. When you get Vogue models, hey, take pictures of me naked, rock on. You know, that's pretty freaking awesome. Tell me a little bit about. Because you have traveled extensively to Romania and Slovenia and a lot of the old Eastern Bloc countries. What would you say is the difference culturally between women being open to nudity and that sort of thing versus the fabled prudishness of some American women? Of course, that's gone completely out the window now, but they jump from we're prudes to we're sleeping with everyone. The attitudes of like nudity and sexual content overall, what would you say is the difference in the old Eastern Bloc countries between what's going on in the States?
So it's kind of complicated because, like in Romania, for instance, you will see toplessness on the beaches every once in a while. And that used to be very common in California until the cell phone came. And unfortunately, cell phones ruined that. The other thing that ruined is that California used to have wild parties, and you'd see girls all the time flash their boobs. You just don't see that so much anymore because of cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the cell phone is great for some things, but it ruined other things. In Eastern Europe, it's kind of sad is that you would see a lot of girls who would, it's not like common, but it happens. A lot of girls will prostitute themselves to pay their way through college.
Right.
And the economy is terrible in Eastern Europe. Like for instance, we've been to Romania 3 times. The first time we were in Romania, it was 4 of their dollars to 1 of our dollars. It's now 5 to 1. Oh, wow. And we all know the American dollar is not very strong right now. The inflation is going through the roof. As bad as our inflation is, theirs is even worse.
Jeez, so sad.
So yeah, it's bad, and I'm sure all of Eastern Europe is in the same boat right now. It's because you have the war going on between Russia and Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And like it or not, I'm not going to get political at all, but like it or not, Russia's a big supplier of oil. And Ukraine is a big supplier of food. Yes. So you kind of need both oil and food. And here's your
right.
Yeah. Here's your food supplier who's at war with your oil supplier. So, you're getting kicked in both nuts.
Oh man, you know, and especially the Romanians. I mean, like all of the communist bloc countries that they suffered. Uh,
Mhm.
Poland has the Poland has the dubious distinction of jumping straight from the Nazis into the hands of the communists. So they understand
Mhm.
authoritarianism at its worst. But Romania, man, I mean, when you do a deep dive on their history and Ceausescu and that little bit of their history, just absolute brutal. I mean, just the darkness, that cloud that hangs over the culture of that nation. I man, I can't even fathom that. But uh, so you said that so so the models there that are like the high end models. Basically, what I'm trying to draw the distinction here is that they are the ones that are coming to you to be drawn, because like a lot of people would think of the vulnerability of that. They would see it as something to exploit, and
Mhm.
it's really cool that the ones that are coming to you to seek you out, to draw them, it's like a different class than the women that you had spoken about who are having to prostitute themselves to pay their way through things and stuff. Now, how do like dealing with the models? How do the models view the women who are having to, like, is there any kind of judgment culture or anything like that? Like the women who are modeling, looking at the women who are having to prostitute themselves, is there any sort of like hierarchy there? Do they look down on them? Do they just see them as tragic figures? Like, what's the mindset there?
I'm sure they see them as tragic figures because there's an understanding that you have to pay the bills.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
it's not like, hey, I'm better than you. I'm modeling, and that's I'm so much better than you because you have to prostitute yourself.
right,
It's more like, I get it. I wouldn't do this myself, but I get it. You have
yeah,
to do what you can to pay the. Especially Texas doesn't have real winters, and my apologies for the past few years. That was a fluke. That was a complete fluke. That's hopefully, knock on wood, that's not going to happen for another 50 years. That that's the exception. All their winters are like that.
yeah,
And when power goes out, you got a serious problem.
yeah,
So, and people here complain about two, 300, even $400 bills. We make way more than they do. Way more. It's not even close. So I
yeah.
think someone could look this up and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the average salary in Romania is between 1,200 and 1,300 euros a month. And euros are like $1.1, so it's pretty
Yeah,
close.
nothing. Yeah, how?
I Yeah, I don't. I might be wrong, but I don't think there's a single person who's listening to this right now who's making less than 1,200 or 1,300 euros a month.
No.
And if you are, my apologies. I mean, you're really squeaking by, but that's the average person in
Yeah,
Romania. And
that's
imagine a $400 bill.
yeah, yeah. That's, I mean, boom. There's a third of your income gone, a third or more
Yeah.
of your income gone. Plus the standard of living over there too. Uh, what is the meme that's going around now about complaining without suffering, like the strength of suffering without complaining versus the weakness of complaining without actual suffering. And when you look at a culture like that and a people like that have been just kicked in the face for decades between the evils of communism and then coming out from under Ceausescu, and then all of the troubles that are going on now in Eastern Europe and having to make decisions between your food supplier and your oil supplier. I mean, but I think that is a real testament to the resiliency of them as a people. Do you
Mhm.
find that strong women, right? The generic term strong women. Do you find more of those strong women coming out of that culture than you see here in the States?
Yes, people in America complain about things that they shouldn't be complaining about.
Right.
And I always say, leave the country. Like, for instance, the first time that we traveled was to Dominican Republic in 2014. What happened was, I mean, you know my background. You know that I'm working class, and all of a sudden, the missus and I have all this money, and she's like, you know, we should actually travel. So we went to the Dominican Republic in 2014. We rode horses, and the guy who had the horses wanted to show us his village. His village had one outhouse for 4 families.
Oh no!
Now imagine really having to go number 2.
Yeah.
And you have to wait for 3 other people to finish. And everybody knows the smell of an outhouse. I mean, it sucks. Just imagine sharing it with 3 other families. Not only that,
in subtropical,
yes, in subtropical weather. And not only that, they shared one kitchen. And we saw the kitchen. It wasn't that impressive. They had one refrigerator and then one kitchen between 4 families. So the complaining that we have here, and you know, it's like I get it, you know, because everybody's looking at the guy next door rather than seeing the rest of the world. But really, leave America, go to a third world country, and then you'll see how the rest of the world lives. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It looks like we've lost Bart for a little bit. So let me tell you the context of this is I'm a huge Ozzy and Randy fan. And I drew this because we were listening to Suicide Solution today. And I remember that song was banned. And if you actually listen to the lyrics of Suicide Solution, it's about alcoholism. Yet people said that it was pro-suicide, which is completely silly. If people would just listen to the lyrics to see what it's about. Now, that said, I believe that if you're an artist, you should be allowed to write anything that you want to write. I believe I'm a free speech absolutist. So I think the whole thing that he was sued for that, and of course he got thrown out of court, but the whole thing that he got sued for the song Suicide Solution was just absolutely absurd. So those of you who are in the 80s, you probably remember that. But if you weren't alive in the 80s, you didn't know that Ozzy Osbourne was sued for one of the songs that he wrote. Now, hopefully Bart would come back. In the meantime, do any of you have any questions for me? I will be very happy to answer them. All right. Well, in the meantime, I guess I will talk about this book. This country visited that. Oh. Okay, Mark. Yeah, country that visited that hit you the most profoundly. That's a great question. Several. Dominican Republic, for several reasons, is that the country is extremely poor. Just whole different a level of poverty. You know, it's like we have poverty in Alaska, we have poverty in the deep south. We have poverty, not denying that we don't, but their level of poverty is even worse. And yet they are very happy people. And then you really see it in their dancing. That we've been to Colombia, and I don't mean to be a jerk, but Colombian people can't dance. Dominican Republic people, phenomenal dancers. I'm a good dancer, but they're on a whole different level of dancing. So they're one of the favorite countries that we visited. My absolute favorite city was Venice. I think that Venice is so beautiful. And the sad thing about Venice is the people are not having enough kids. And because of that, you're seeing a lot of things close down. So you're seeing buildings that were built in the medieval days, or the late medieval days, early Renaissance. Ah, cool, you're back.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you been on the entire time? Have you been on
Yeah.
stream? Okay, good, bro. Because I just we totally clipped out here, but it looks like we're solid for the moment. It might anyway. So Mark Hensley's got a question. What country did you visit that hit you the most profoundly?
Yeah, I was just answering that. So just several, and then of course Romania, because when by a fluke we became friends with the people who we visited in Romania. I actually met someone on Facebook, and then she's like, "You need to come visit." So we did, and now we're like really close to this day.
That's outstanding.
So yeah, several countries, and America is my favorite country. It's every time you leave America, you come back here, and it's like, wow, we have it good. And this is worth fighting for. So people do not abandon this country. Buy guns, learn to use them, and protect this country at all costs.
You see why this man is my brother, right? You see why this man is my brother. Joel has an interesting question before we part ways here, asking me if I'm still playing guitar. No, Joel, I am not. My nerves are basically dead from the wrist down. I have coarse motor skills, like for throwing pistol slides and things like that, but like precision work, there's times that I actually have to look at my fingers when I'm putting a key into an ignition or a lock or something like that. I've attempted to play, but I actually got to the point where I have to manually put my fingers in the position to play a D chord. Like I could still probably manage power chords just like root fifth, but it's sloppy and I've got no tactile feedback. But Roman and I did jam quite a bit back in the day, and we had our stuff pretty well down, man. I remember just off in the jam room with the stacks. Roman could shred. Roman could actually could seriously shred. And I remember the first time he came over to jam with me, like we bonded. We were both like, Metallica fans. I mean, like early Metallica fans before they, cut their hair and started dressing like Cuban pimps. Although, thanks to Papa Head, they're making a comeback now. But he came over and it was that little crate, I think like a little 60-watt crate with like two 12s, I think, two 10s, two 12s. And came over with this. It was before you bought the Ibanez. I can't remember what that red Strat that you had, but it was before you bought the first Ibanez. And I was jamming on that. I had the Area Pro 2 Double Z, and I had the Area Pro 2 coffee table looking guitar. But I remember, so he gets the guitar out of the case, and I'm like, all right. And he just, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, wow, this guy's really skilled, and I said, how long have you been playing, man? How long have you been playing? He was like, oh, it'll be like a year, I think, like a month from now, it'll be like a year. And I'm like, but of course he had the musical background in like piano and everything too, that served him in that capacity. But I just couldn't believe like the skill level. And of course, he continued to get better, and it was a blast, man. We had some good times. We had some really good times jamming back in the day, man. Just, Metallica covers and a lot of different heavy metal covers and that metal waltz that you wrote. I remember sitting there with that little Takamine acoustic, playing the acoustic part of it, and you doing the electric and like doing the harmonies and stuff on the electric. It was good times, man. Good, old to be young and bulletproof again. But man, look. So you're self-publishing the book, right? Where can we get the book? Is it on Amazon yet?
Amazon, yeah. So cool. Just search for Roman Riva, and it'll pop up. Dork to Pimp Daddy.
Yep.
And it's a fun book, but let me just tell one thing is that yes, I could get you from stick figures to drawing beautiful nudes, but it's a lot of work. So I take you step by step. So it's not like, you just buy the book and all of a sudden you're doing awesome.
Right.
You have to do the work.
Like anything worthwhile,
yeah.
you got to put the effort in.
And
well, brother, listen.
Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead. No, please finish.
Okay, so and another caveat is anyone could do this except if your hand is damaged. Bart won't be able to do it. Just, I mean, I don't mean to be a jerk, but just, if you can't play the guitar, then you won't be able to draw the fine details.
Right. Well, what is it? What is it? Dirty Harry said in Magnum Force: "A man's got to know his limitations."
Yeah.
Right on. Well, listen, man. Congratulations on putting the book out, and we're gonna try to send some business over your way. Again, look up Roman Riva, From Dork to Pimp Daddy, and get your hands to the book, man. Get your drawing skills up, and maybe if you've been looking for that way to actually establish some game with some beautiful naked women without having to swipe left or swipe right, it could be your ticket, man. Could be your ticket. So, Roman, thanks, man, for everything. I mean, over the years, for the friendship, for every moment that we've shared, the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads. I'm honored to hold you close to my heart, man. We've been really close for a really, really long time, across the miles and across the years. And I appreciate every moment that we've been able to share. And I'm really proud that you stay on that creative endeavor. We'll have you back on, and we'll share some other stories with these folks that they probably wouldn't have seen coming from either of us. But yeah, man, our very first remote guest. Do you see this? We've got our very first remote guest on here, so now we can do interviews with folks, and Roman has set the pace for that. Good luck to you in all future endeavors, brother. I'm happy to have you on. God bless you, man.
Yeah, thank you. And I got to give one thing of credit to Bart, actually two, is to this day, yes, I could shred, but I got my timing from Bart. He would always get on my case for not having good timing, so I work with the metronome like crazy because of Bart. The second thing is Bart used to have the sweetest vibrato you've ever heard in your life.
Oh,
his vibrato was like made Yngwie Malmsteen's vibrato look kind of weak. So dude. I stole that from Bart. That's to this day, I copy Bart's vibrato.
That is you bring a tear to my eye, man, because I mean, like, not really facing the prospect of not really being able to play with any level of skill ever again. It's kind of nice to know that I've got that legacy living on through somebody that's got the talent. So, man, thank you for sharing that, brother. Thank you.
All right,
man. Well, listen, man, give my love to the wife, and big hugs all around. You are back in Texas now? Yes. Okay, I'm in the Panhandle. Depending on what time, depending on what week, what day, whatever, what the timing is, I may just do like a big loop through Texas, before I go back to the house, depending on how long we got left on the shutdown. So maybe we can put something together, but at the very least, the next time I'm in Houston, we all got to get together. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. I love you, brother. God bless, man. Take care. Guys, Roman Riva, buy the book. Check him out, and check out opiumtales.com. Beautiful naked women, testosterone-driven commentary. It's everything that the grazers think is toxic, which means you want a piece of that. God bless you, Roman. We'll check back with you, man. Take care of yourself. All right. Wow. So that, I mean, minus the hiccup on my end, losing the Wi-Fi, that actually went really, really well. So cool. Now that's another thing that we can do. And if I can get a Wi-Fi booster, a Wi-Fi extender, then maybe we will make a regular habit of having some guests on to interview. I can think of 2 or 3 right off the bat, but I wanted to get Roman in first because, again, he's one of my oldest and dearest friends. He's a really great guy, and he was also willing to be a lab rat. So so that actually worked out really, really well. So we move on to some of the other bullet points that I had established. What did we say here? Refresher on avoiding doublethink. that was something. And man, I kind of wish, shit, probably could have kept roaming on and had some interesting dialogue with regard to that. Plenty of it going around. You guys are familiar with. You guys know your Orwell because you're my people, so you know your Orwell. You know that you know what doublethink is as a concept. It is having your brain so skewed that you can hold two completely contradictory thoughts, ones that are of necessity mutually exclusive, contradictory thoughts, and embrace and believe them both. It was a fundamental tenet of the Ministry of Truth. It was a fundamental tenet of Newspeak. Newspeak retooling the entire language, and doublethink. Doublethink has become a new stock in trade. And I'm not going to belabor the point because most of you are fairly solid critical thinkers. We all have our biases, right? I wear mine on my sleeve. I have no illusion about my biases. Case in point, what's going on in Gaza right now. We are being told, and again, the Ministry of Truth acting as a propaganda wing for the regime. Israel was attacked by Hamas out of Gaza. They came in, they butchered close to 1,000 civilians, I think is the last count. Israel, of course, has been laying waste to Gaza and expanding their territories and expanding their settlements and all this kind of thing. And we're asked to pick one side or the other. And yet we're supposed to give by this doesn't truly rise to the level of doublethink, but we're supposed to be okay if you are a leftist and you're playing your, party over principle as they do. The attack was Hamas attacking Israel. And so the appropriate response in the mind of the regime is to give $10 billion, which we don't have, to Israel. And in the process, also give $60 billion to Ukraine while giving $100 million to Gaza and Hamas for humanitarian aid, which, like all the aid we've given to Ukraine, there's no accountability for it. We are taught that Hamas is evil. Well, Hamas is evil on any number of levels, but the main thing that they keep driving home, specifically to sell to evangelical Christians, is that, and to leftist historians, is Hamas is evil because they hate Jews. And yet, in that bill, we gave 10 billion to Jews who were attacked by Muslims while giving 60 billion to a nation of literal Nazis. Literal Nazis. I don't know how much more plain I can make it. Yes, but their leader's a Jew, allegedly. But that alleged Jew, literally stood up in front of Canadian Parliament knowing that the guy they were about to give a standing ovation to was an actual Nazi. Not a retiree wearing a MAGA hat, but an actual freaking Nazi. And Zelensky stood and applauded. He knew exactly what he was doing. He runs a nation and an army crawling with Nazis. And up until the Russian invasion, none of your left-wing political outlets had a problem saying that because it's an absolute irrefutable fact. ODP, fact. Objectively, demonstrably, provably factual. ODP, fact. We're supposed to hate Hamas because they're trying to kill Jews, yet we're giving 6 times the money to a country run by a Jew who's commanding an army made of Nazis. That's actually quadruple think when you get into it. There are no easy answers, and this is the thing that we are compelled to do as thinking, breathing, intellectual creatures. If we have ideological consistency and intellectual honesty, we are compelled, right, to think this all the way through. You have heard me say before, and I'm really trying to refrain. I'm trying to clean up my language. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm cursing a lot less. Um, Whole part of like trying to walk right and all that. But you've heard me say it before. Some days there just aren't enough fuck yous to go around, right? Hamas, we want to kill the Jews. We want to eliminate the West. We're gonna torture people, and like the accounts of torture that are coming out of there, horrible, horrible, man. You've got children that have had digits severed. Like they're finding these families that were visibly and obviously horribly tortured before a single eye plucked out of a kid's head, kind of thing. Digits severed by segment, joint by joint. They find the remains of the digit laying there next to the dead body in a pool of blood, right? We're doing this because they're Jewish and we hate the Jews and we hate the West. And once we are done with, I mean, their own ideology, once we are done with the Saturday people, they are coming for the Sunday people. If you guys aren't religious or aren't particularly historically well versed, they come for the Saturday people. Saturday is the Sabbath for the Jews. American Christians go to church on Sunday. And they'll flat out say it. Once we have taken care of the Saturday people, we're coming for the Sunday people. So, Hamas, fuck you. On the other hand, Israel, and I'm not talking about Israel, the people, Israel, God's church. I'm not talking about the Jews who are citizens of Israel. I am talking about Israel, the little trademark over here, Israel, TM, the secular nation based on scriptural doctrine that denies Christ. And yet the evangelicals are all behind them. And what have they done? That hospital strike in Gaza this week that allegedly was an American supplied Israeli JDAM that hit the hospital and destroyed the hospital and killed like 500 or 600 people in a single strike. Okay, that didn't happen. There was a missile strike. All right. It was not a JDAM. It was an errant. And you do a deep dive on that. This isn't me playing sides because I don't have a dog in this fight. Right. But one of Hamas's missiles went astray, whether by intent, which is not outside the realm of possibility with these savages, right? Or whether it was an accident and it hit and it was launched from a cemetery behind the hospital. So again, fuck yous all around. You are hiding your missile launch facility in a cemetery behind a hospital. You are making that hospital a legitimate military target. Sorry, but there it is. And this is a tactic, the human shield thing. So fuck Hamas for all of that. But fuck the media for turning around and saying that it was, what was that? They surrendered plausible deniability on that when they blew up whole city blocks. Yes, agreed. But again, specificity matters. This particular incident, Israel was not responsible for, right? This particular incident. However, that doesn't give them a pass on all the stuff that we discussed going into it, the cluster munitions, right? I briefly touched on it going through the opener, but you see the way this is put together. I think that is a CB-37 ordnance specialist. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But this is the way cluster munitions work. That shell comes down, it splits open, and this little wire cage, all of these little bomblets that are contained within, they scatter over an area the size of 1 to 3 football fields. They get down to just about head level, 5 to 10 feet above the ground, and they all detonate. This is not anti-equipment munition. This is to kill people. Lots of them freaking horribly, right? Imagine a storm of shrapnel. For my people in Houston, if you have ever been downtown or just watched the news coverage during a hurricane where the wind is whipping between the buildings and the broken glass is just like a storm of flesh shredding material, those are cluster munitions, right? They have used cluster munitions against civilian areas of Gaza. So fuck them, right? You can't justify that on any level, but from a military strategic standpoint, if they are launching missiles from inside civilian areas and putting those missiles right next to schools and hospitals and saying, we're going to launch, I dare you to hit us back, you're not going to kill innocent people. At some point, Israel says, fuck, we're not. But that's not why. That's not why they do it. That is the military and strategic rationale for doing it. But at the end of the day, the Israelis have just as much hatred for Hamas as Hamas has for the Israelis. If they were unleashed diplomatically, militarily, they were unleashed in spite of, even if the U.S. pulled out all of their aid and just turned them loose, they would kill every last man, woman, and child in Gaza, throughout the land that they are claiming as Palestine, which never existed, and we don't need to get off into that. They would kill every last man, woman, and child. The level of savagery here and here is absolutely the same. It's only one side that's manifesting it out here in the tangible world currently. The hatred exists. There just aren't enough fuck yous to go around. Being able to have that discernment will steer you away from the doublethink. We hate them because they hate Jews, but we're going to give money to these people who are run by Nazis who kill Jews and Muslims, and Russia's the bad guy for invading them because the Nazis went into this territory and were killing Russians, and Russia goes back and it's an unprovoked invasion. All of these ideas, if you know the truth behind it, are contradictory, and yet you're expected to hold them all at the same time. If you're on the left, you gladly embrace that principle because you have no soul and no critical thinking skills whatsoever. You're just, yes, Rachel Maddow said it, and the regime has spoken, and the party has spoken, and we must not oppose the party. Yes, we must the orange man bad. All right. Yeah, that's where you're at, right? Now, to my conservatives, you are no better. You are no better. You guys spent 2, almost 3 years, quite correctly, with regard to the vaccine, saying you can't trust a word that comes out of the media's mouth. Boy, they lie about everything. They lie about this. They lie about that. They're lying right now, just trying to advance an agenda. And then the minute Russia has their unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, boy, we got to get them Russians. They're trying to get the empire back. It's like, bro, do you hear yourself? The media must be trusted when it comes to matters of war. The media must not be trusted when it comes to matters of, oh, well, damn near anything else. Learn to use this lump of gray matter inside that thick freaking skull. It is entirely possible, if you understand nuance and you understand historical flow, to say that this was not done by a JDAM, it was done by an errant missile from Hamas, and Israel is not responsible for this, while still knowing that Israel is responsible for this. That is white phosphorus. That is, for all intents and purposes, and we can dicker about this, and I'm sure Tom is probably going to have some objections to it, but under most circumstances, white phosphorus is banned for use in warfare because it kills horribly. It is an incendiary, and it burns at a temperature that you can't even get your head around. If you have something that white phosphorus has adhered to and you completely submerge it, the white phosphorus will continue to burn using the oxygen molecules in the water for fuel. It will melt through an engine block. It kills, it scars, it maims, it mutilates. And you know what? It's war. You can believe that Hamas are terrible people and accidentally bombed their own hospital. But you were compelled to also accept that even though Israel didn't do this thing this time, they've done that and worse on 100 other occasions. Yeah, but who's the white hat? Who's the black hat? Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Exactly. It's intellectually lazy. It's ideologically inconsistent, and it's cowardly on an intellectual level. If you truly put principle, if you truly put fact over party affiliation, you are compelled to make the factual observations and say, look, there are no good guys here. So if there are no good guys, who do we give our money to? Well, apparently we give our money to everyone. Everyone except the Russians. Russia's got plenty of their own money. The regime's sanctions have ensured that the ruble is one of the strongest currencies on the planet now. Great job, Joe. Good job. But Israel uses these cluster munitions and the horror that they unleash on the ground, getting back to what was in the opener, right? What was in the opener? The horror that these things unleash on the ground level. We've been giving them as foreign aid to Israel for years, right? They've actually got plants in Israel that are manufacturing those munitions now. They don't really need our help. We continue to give it to them because the truth. When Putin was alleged to have used cluster munitions in the Donbass, alleged, no proof. You guys remember Ginger Goebbels, Peppermint Patty, White House press secretary at the time? One thing I will say for her is she was a beautiful woman and a skilled liar, unlike the diversity hire that replaced her. But she said that they couldn't substantiate it, but if Putin was using cluster munitions, that he was a war criminal, should be brought to the Hague on trial for war crimes. Then, barely 2 years later, the regime, with little sawed-off Volodymyr here, they start giving them the same cluster munitions. Again, that butts up on doublethink. Not doublethink by definition. Cluster bombs are a war crime, which is why we must give cluster bombs to the people that we wish to win. And when the people that we wish to win use them, they are not war crimes. They are legitimate responses, you see. Yes, it totally makes sense how if Hamas hits Israel with rockets and low-level small arms and munition, horrible stuff, all of it, torturous, murderous. They're animals, okay? Man, you got to pick a side. No, I don't. No, I freaking don't. Nor should you. I can acknowledge that I can acknowledge that Hamas are animals. Dogs walking upright. I'll even make it worse because they're Muslims, pigs walking upright. Okay? I will say that. What is that? Chinese loved white phosphorus for Americans in the Korean War? Absolutely. Public school, 70s browbeat us. Russia, bad. Yeah, they did. 70s and the 80s. I remember. That was when, this is the thing. Again, they're horrible now, but they were great when they were still Soviet communist. Wow. If the left could have worked up this much hatred for the Russians back when they were still Soviet communists, we probably could have shaved 20 years off the Cold War. Easily. So, Mark, you're absolutely right in that assessment. Here's the thing, man. You have to keep your eyes open. You have to accept that there are not going to be good guys and bad guys. Now, if you want to make a decision based on something that is objective, right? Say, for instance, we know that Hamas are animals. We know that Jihad Johnny and Muhammad's minions are absolute vermin and filth. Oh, that's what a propaganda guy would say. Okay. Yeah, you're right. That is what a propaganda guy would say. But as for me, it's coming from the heart. They're vermin. They're filth. They're beneath contempt. They're horrible people. They're existential enemies of the West. And that is why I oppose them. Oh, so you oppose them, so you support Israel. I didn't say that. And suddenly the grazer jaw drops. They can't process that you don't have to pick a side. That lesser of two evils is still evil. You would think that we would have learned that from the last 4 presidential elections, but apparently we have not. Hamas are animals. Islam as a religion. Oh man, I know plenty of good Muslims. Good on you. The plural of anecdote is not data. They have a higher body count than anyone else on the planet. All religions are equally violent. Okay, in doctrine or in practice? Yeah, what about my favorite? What about the Crusades? Okay, first of all, Sparky, I didn't realize we were having this discussion in the 14 freaking hundreds. But even then, the Crusades were a defensive response to Muslim aggression. And as far as I'm concerned, Deus Vult, motherfucker. Is that insensitive? I hope so. Because that's the intent. I hate every representative of that of the radical element of that religion. I hate every participant of with the burning fire of 1,000 suns. I break no bread with them. I have no love for them whatsoever. I am compelled by Scripture to forgive them. But again, that's separating the sinner from the sin. And right now, we are not being set upon by sinners. We are being set upon by the sin of that group of sinners. And Israel is feeling the wrath. And this is a tragedy. Oh, so you do support Israel? I didn't say that. I did not say that. Because as horrible as the thought is of having Jihad Johnny, 4 of them, kick in your front door and torture you, and torture your family in front of you, and torture you in front of your family, and pluck your kid's eye out and sever digits one joint at a time. That's horrific. That's bestial in every sense of the word. Have you ever seen what a child's body looks like after being wrapped up in burning white phosphorus? Have you ever seen what a child's body looks like after being shredded with shrapnel from a cluster munition? Yeah, but they brought it on themselves, did they? Were they the guys that signed the Balfour Declaration? Were they the ones that signed UN 281 in 1947? They brought it on themselves. The most important word in this entire thought process is the word however. In 1947, that UN resolution established a 2-state solution, the one that they keep talking about wanting now. The so-called Palestinians would not have it. They said no. From the what to the what? Come on, guys. You know this one. We're hearing it from college kids all over the place. Shende, good to see you, brother. From the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. The alleged Palestinians, they would not have it. They said, no, you're not going to set foot on here. We are not doing anything with it. We won't have anything to do with it, and commenced to trying to kill them. What did America and the UN do? We armed Israel to establish an ethno-state. Wait a minute. However, yes, the Palestinians rejected that solution. However, they had no grounds where they should have accepted it in the first place. However, they didn't have to turn it into a violent pogrom against the newly arrived Jewish refugees. However, the U.S. had no business arming those newly arrived Jewish refugees, ironically, with captured Nazi weapons in a lot of cases. Look it up. However, once the borders were established and they were stable. Yeah, but however, the so-called Palestinians never lost their hatred for the Jews. However, the Jews started expanding. Oddly enough, Jews having just come out from the Nazis use Lebensraum as an excuse to expand into territories to the east. Wow, that sounds vaguely familiar. German with a funny mustache. However, these people had lived on this land, and then the religious. However, God had promised the land to Abraham. You could spin yourself up in this. How far do you want to go? At some point, you've got to nail down what principles you are willing to stand behind and why. I do not stand with Israel. I don't. But in the confrontation between Western civilization and the savagery that is radical Islam, I stand with the West. Oh, so you do stand with Israel because Israel represents the West. No, they do not. Israel currently represents the West as a matter of convenience because to them we are a client state and a writer of blank checks. Their loyalty to us holds nothing. But Bart, you're a Christian. You know God's chosen people and all that. Were you here for the rant last week? Were you here for the rant last week? And I didn't even get into Revelation 3:9 in the rant. I got into the actual text from the Talmud that denies Christ as the Messiah and says that he is boiling in shit for all eternity as a false prophet. That's in the Talmud. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. They will play the however game with you there. Well, that's out of context. Really. How do you context Christ is a false prophet and he's boiling in shit for eternity? How do you context that? So all you evangelical Christians that have gotten the wool pulled over your eyes, and I'm going to pull this right back. I'm going to pull this right back to what we covered in the beginning. If I can still, it is here. There we go. Revelation 3:9, behold, I will make of them a synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet and to know that I have loved thee. Context that. Context Christ himself running through the temple. Who was it that had turned his father's temple into a den of thieves? Who was it that would later go on to be instrumental in his crucifixion and then denying him as the Messiah and calling him a false prophet? Who was that? The moneylenders? What? Who was it? What were Christ's words? You are of your father the devil, and your father's work you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning. When you lie, you do your father's work because he is a lie and the father of it. You have turned my father's temple into a den of thieves. And yet, evangelical Christians unable to make the distinction. Now, again, I keep offering these things and I keep putting out this challenge. And I pray the blood of Christ on this. Pray the blood of Christ on this. If I am wrong, show me. If there is a biblical scholar out there that can show me, or a Talmud scholar who can show me how I am wrong in this assessment, I am all ears. I give you my word. I give you my word. What do the kids say? On God. I give you my word on God. I am willing to hear the case. If I am wrong, present it to me. You don't have to do it publicly. I'm a big, loud, menacing guy. I get why you would not want to do that face to face. I promise you I would hear you out. But if you want to send it to me as a message, as an email, an anonymous mail, reverendbart@hotmail.com. Okay? If you need that. I don't think I have that in my banners. So what do you say we create another banner? That's a beautiful thing that I can do on the fly. If you think that I am wrong in this assessment and you wish to educate me as to why I am wrong, I will hear your case. And I'm not going to put any time constraints on it. Send me pages of why I am wrong. Pages of why I'm wrong. Send it to that email address. Anything else that you have to send for me too. If you want to offer me some constructive criticism, if you want to berate me, if you want to call me everything but a child of God, do it there. It's right here. Boom. ReverendBart@hotmail.com. If I am wrong in this assessment of the Gaza situation, please enlighten me. Because ultimately, I'm ready to choke on some of that good old truth cock if I am in error. That's what it means to be intellectually courageous versus being an intellectual coward. That is what it is to be willing to evolve in the presence of new facts, being versus being strapped to an ideology for the sake of that ideology, because that's the team that you've always played for. Whether that team is the Christian faith, whether that team is the Republican or the Democratic Party, whether that team is your country of origin or the color of your skin or whatever it is, what we went over this in the rant. What is God's fundamental command, particularly for followers of Christ, is to walk in truth. Walk in truth. So if my understanding of the truth is incorrect, I am more than happy for one of you more scholarly scholars out there to scholar my ass. Please do. I gave you the email address. You can find it. So, didn't they threaten to burn and kill countless if Jesus was not condemned? Yes. Well, okay, it's okay. That is open to interpretation, but at the end of the day, it's funny because I heard Ben Shapiro, Tiny Hat Crowd, Ben Shapiro. I'm wearing a yarmulke. Did I mention my wife is a doctor? I have the most irritating voice in the entire conservative movement. And by the way, ethno states are bad, y'all. And ethnic nationalism is really, really bad. But we got to stand before we got to stand by Israel, because I'm wearing a yarmulke and it's the Jewish people and they've been tortured and persecuted, And did I mention my wife was a doctor? Yeah, Ben Shapiro this week said on a podcast, no, I don't believe that Christ is the Messiah. Christ is just another Jewish guy that tried to lead a revolt against the Romans, and the Romans crucified him for it. That is not my understanding, okay? And they did not threaten to burn and kill countless numbers, but they did threaten. Look at the position that Pontius Pilate was in. He offered to free either Christ or Barabbas, and the chosen called for Barabbas to be released. Child molester, murderer, the worst of the worst, and they called for Barabbas to be released. Even then, Pontius Pilate did not believe that Christ was guilty of any major crime. But here's the thing: they didn't threaten to burn and kill thousands, but they made that political threat. How is Rome, speaking to Pilate, how is Rome going to react if suddenly there's a massive uprising in your territory because you wouldn't crucify someone who has spoken out against Rome? That's what they braced him with, Tom. My understanding of the scripture, again, if there were more scholarly people, but my understanding is that's how they braced Pilate. And in the end, Pilate said no. He stood. He released Christ to the Jews. And yes, there were Roman soldiers that orchestrated the coordination of getting him to Calvary Hill and driving the nails in and putting the spear in his side. Yes, they were participants, but this was not a Roman decision. The Romans were not responsible for. They were responsible for the physical end of putting him on that cross, but it was the chosen that led him to the foot of it. Make no mistake. Again, any of you scholars, feel free to scholar my ass. Pilate said no. Famously, I wash my hands of this. You want him crucified, you crucify him. I'm not going to pronounce death on this man. In any case, I'm way off topic here. I'm way off topic, and I'm really kind of okay with that. Doublethink. You got to learn how to play the game. You got to learn how propaganda is played. You've got to learn the word games that they use so as to make yourself less vulnerable. Scripture does not show the physical threat from the Jews. All things happen as prophesied. Pilate knew he was in deep shit. Yes, Deacon Mark, thank you for that. You've got to learn how they play the game. You have to study the best of the propagandists. You have to study Pravda and TASS. You have to study North Korea's media control. You have to study the communist Chinese and their social credit system and their media censorship and control system. You have to study that because globalists seek to model their next move for us on that. And if you do not take a crash course in that and familiarize yourself with it, as much as you think yourself a critical thinker, you can still be swayed. I am not invulnerable. It's not like I've got some bulletproof superpower where my mind is unshakable and can't be swayed with the right amount of propaganda, because everybody has their biases and their weaknesses, and that is what propaganda plays to. Study that, lest ye find yourself conflicted with doublethink. From Fortune magazine, Elon Musk's Twitter removes the New York Times gold verification badge. Why? Why did he do that? Well, because he's a right-wing ideologue, man, and he's stumping for MAGA conservatives. No, he did it for the same reason that the New York Post lost their verification and had their account shut down before Elon was running the show. Do you guys remember in the run-up to the election when Hunter's laptop first surfaced and what happened? Twitter shut down the New York Post's whole account to prevent that story from gaining traction. 51 intelligence agents say that it's Russian disinformation, none of whom have recanted, and it's all been verified now. It is information warfare. So what is the difference between them doing it and Elon doing it? Elon had legitimate factual grounds. When Twitter, pre-Elon, banned the New York Post account for reporting on Hunter's laptop, they knew. The intelligence agents at the time that signed that memo, it has come out, a lot of them, they knew. The FBI definitely knew. Everyone in the deep state, which does exist, knew. And they lied. They specifically shut the account down on Twitter to prevent the story from gaining traction. So what did Elon do? Isn't he censoring people? Aren't you a free speech absolutist? He let them say it, but he removed their verification badge. He didn't shut down their account. He just said they are no longer a trusted source. Why? Because they reported verified lies as fact over this Gaza hospital bombing. It would have been one thing for the New York Times to do their usual deep state song and dance and go, Israel has a long history of bombing civilian areas, without mentioning the fact that Hamas launches missiles from those civilian areas again. However. But they didn't do that this time. They did not pull the story. They did not make any apologies. And even after it had been verified that the better part of that hospital structure was still standing, that 500 people had not been killed, and that the rocket responsible for the attack was one of Hamas's own rockets launched from a civilian cemetery behind the hospital, even after all of that had been verified, they continued to report the party line. They have always been a propaganda ministry. They continue to be a propaganda ministry, but now they're not even trying anymore. And that is why Elon said, okay, no, you're free to say your stuff here, but I'll be damned if you're going to have your gold verification badge. Because before I showed up, you guys were shutting down whole accounts when they preached things that went against the deep state, even though they were factual and verified. ODP, objectively, demonstrably, provably verified facts. ODP. Pre-Elon Twitter shut them down. New York Times keeps reporting lies. Rashida Tlaib, the Rash, as I like to call her, Rashida Tlaib, Palestinian, horse face, dog walking upright, waste of flesh, horrible human being. Snatch probably smells like an open sewer. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay, that was too far. Probably correct, but too far. She is a horrible person. a bitter, evil, vicious person, and a liar. 2 days after all of that story had been completely debunked, she continued to spit it as if it were truth for a willing cadre of useful idiots on college campuses going, "We must stand with Gaza from the river to the sea. Palestine must be free." Palestine? Really? Tell me, who was the first king of Palestine? No? Oh, right. Tell me about the Republic of Palestine. Give me the history of the nation of Oh, wait. Yeah, you can't because it doesn't exist. Oh, see there. So you're stumping for Israel. No, I'm not. Religious radicalism? Religious radicalism. Oh, you mean like God promised this land to Abraham thousands of years ago, so the UN's got to give us guns and give us this strip of land? That kind of religious radicalism? No, I'm not standing with that, particularly for a people and a gospel that denies Christ. Won't do it. Sorry. Again, scholar me, people. If I'm wrong, school me. You've got my email address. In fact, I'm just going to pop that back up there and I'm just going to let it sit. I'm just going to let it sit. If I'm wrong, send me a freaking email. Show me I'm wrong. Take all the time you need. Take paragraphs. I love to read. And I love to expand my understanding. And if there are facts that I am not taking into account, if there are things that I am taking out of context, please, by all means, there it is. There's the email address. School me. Elon removed their gold verification badge. Why? Because they reported actual misinformation. Things that were lies, things that were verifiable falsehoods. But you got to watch out for that word misinformation. Because when the government starts flexing their muscle, or even other corporate entities, when they shut down factual information, facts, as we've distinguished before, you can state facts without leading to truth. Deliberately misleading people, guess what, is still protected under freedom of speech. And when you let governments or corporate entities working on behalf of governments, as pre-Elon Twitter was, verified, you're lost. Misinformation. The key to beating misinformation is educating people. Telling people legit what's really, really, really going on. Do we have the courage to do that anymore? I don't know. Remains to be seen as far as I'm concerned. Don't give in to the doublethink. Don't give in to forcing yourself to play a team sport. Again, if you wish to oppose Gaza or stand temporarily with Israel because of the threat that Gaza poses to Western civilization, that is an argument that I will entertain. That is an argument that I could get behind. But if you feel like you're scripturally obligated as an evangelical Christian, you are not. You are not. Period. End of statement. Done. We have misinformation. Again, the doublethink here. We have spent the last 3 years being told that the number one threat to domestic security is domestic terrorism. Meanwhile, we've had a wide open southern border. We're pulling people every single week that are crossing that border that are on known terror watch lists. Who knows how many sleeper cells? And after being told for 3 years that it was a conspiracy theory that there were sleeper cells inside the United States, Christopher Wray comes out this past week and the possibility exists of this kind of terror attack here inside the borders of the United States. Oh, do tell. Who could have seen that coming? So you understand we're in a bit of a quandary here. We're flying blind. No good can come of it. There are no good guys. You want to do you know what? I'm just going to throw something out here. I want you to Google Israel, Palestine, no good guys, and click on news. I want you to click on Ukraine, Russia, no good guys, and click on news. And you look at the enormity of the spectrum of stances and positions and perspectives that you will get. And then come back and tell me how you're ironclad in your judgments. You can say that you support whoever you want on whatever principle you wish, but just be direct about it and stop having your opinion handed to you by people who have agendas. What, you don't think I recognize Russian propaganda when the Russians are spitting out propaganda? You don't think I recognize that? That I can look at the facts. If RT puts out a release about, say, the death of Prigozhin or anything going on with the Wagner group, and Alexi, if you're watching, I know you're like, yeah. Sonny, if you're watching, I know you're like, yeah. RT puts something out, I'm able to distinguish, okay, what they're presenting here is a fact, but does this fact necessarily lead to truth? No, not necessarily. Yeah, but that's different. That's state controlled media. Oh, really? Really? State controlled media. And you're telling me that legacy media here in the States doesn't work hand and glove with the regime as a propaganda ministry? Because that kind of came out in congressional hearings where the FBI, the modern day American Stasi, was communicating with media outlets and social media outlets and telling them to minimize and marginalize and suppress stories that went against the regime, that went against the deep state. You people don't understand how deep we're in already. You've heard me bring it up a million times, but I'll bring it up a million and one. Survivors of communism, Soviet communism, they say the one good thing about living under communism is you know that anything that you saw in a newspaper, anything you heard on the radio, TV, Pravda, TASS, you knew that it was propaganda. And so you had to dig through the propaganda to find out what were facts and if those facts led you to the truth, or if those facts deliberately omitted part of the truth, or if those facts deliberately led you away from the truth. To discern facts versus truth, you knew that the propaganda was in full effect. Americans are stupid. Fewer and fewer are believing it now, so more and more people are getting red pilled. But Americans are stupid because they think they're still getting objective information. Not only are they getting information that is issued by corporate propaganda machines, but the government is literally, the regime is literally working with social media and legacy media outlets pushing propaganda. And it was Obama who signed off on the bill that made it happen. Do the deep dive on that yourself. Fact check me. I'm not your freaking guru. But what I'm telling you are facts. You look at the facts that I presented to you and you figure out which part of that is the truth. My job is to present the facts and the truth as I understand it. Your job is to sort through those facts, figure out that they are facts, and decide where that leads you to truth and how much truth is contained in the facts that I'm presenting. You guys tracking? Yes. Don't take anybody's word for anything. Truth, walking in truth, is God's most fundamental command. The duality of God is reflected by the duality of man and vice versa. The loving Father and the vengeful Master. The embracing warmth and the vengeful strike. Embrace that within yourself. Understand that if you are walking in truth and you are trying to walk in light, living in accordance with the will of God, there is going to be a duality to you. You have to maintain the ability to separate the sin from the sinner. Sinners are in abundance. We are all sinners. I am not affected by the presence of sinners. I am affected by sins, lies, 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 sins. Believe as you will. Engage in treachery and degeneracy as you will. When your sin confronts me directly, I am morally obligated not to turn the other cheek, but to strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. I'm being facetious here, but you guys get the point. But walking in the light means that 1,000 may die at thy right hand. Psalm 91. Come on, guys. 1,000 may die at thy right hand, but it will not come nigh thee. My high tower, my fortress, and my deliverer, and I believe that in my heart. This was not always the case. I feel the power of it moving through me, and I feel the power of it moving through the world such as it has become. And I see that word get twisted, and I see the deceptions and manipulations, and I see the way that things get. Why? Deceit, deception. Why? The father of what? The father of lies. The father of lies. The deceiver doesn't even have to work that hard. Not anymore. You see people at work getting microchip implants to be able to wave their hand at the door to get into their tech job. You see people giving away personal information and saddling themselves up with RFID cards for store discounts. I used to think, what was the price of a human soul? What is the price of a human soul? And I thought riches and wealth and power. And as it turns out, it's a 20% discount on motor oil. $1 off gallon of milk if you buy 2. Oh, Bart, that's different. That's a card I carry in my wallet. Yeah, but you're telling me there's not a substantial number of you that wouldn't just put it in the chip for convenience? I would refuse the mark even if it meant my life. You guys wouldn't refuse a jab when it might have cost you your job. Don't get it twisted, Sparky. The deceiver is working, and he doesn't even have to work that hard. You have to maintain that duality. You have to separate the sin from the sinner. You understand what's running the world when those sins confront you. You have to be ready to make a stand. Live the 3. What is the iron rule? Strength, strength, strength. And that strength doesn't just come from here. It's from here, down to your soul. And you're going to need that strength to walk going forward. I want to close with this. Any of my combat vets out there, any of my friends out there, combat vets, done any time in the military, guys are yeah, thank you, Deacon Mark. And you guys out there understand battlefield medicine principle, triage. Since we're speaking about horror, the horror of war on the ground, triage. What is triage? Triage is where you get in a big load of wounded and you have to make decisions on the fly, under pressure, where people are screaming and the smell in the air is abdominal wounds and blood and gunpowder and burnt flesh. And you have to wade through this horror and make decisions in the moment. This guy, too far gone. We're not even going to waste time trying to save him. We will get to these priority cases first. And if he happens to still be alive by the time we get back to him, we'll try to do what we can. But having to decide in that moment, and that's somebody's son, that's somebody's father, somebody's brother, somebody's best friend. But you have to make that decision on the fly. Triage. You have to look at guys that are sporting minor flesh wounds and say, okay, that's a minor flesh wound. We don't need to do anything for him right now. Just wrap some gauze over it, put some direct pressure on it, and let him sit there. And then you got those guys in the middle. Maybe it's an abdominal wound and it's bad and it's a bleeder. You can save him, but he needs to be put on that surgical table right now. That is the principle of triage, separating who gets what treatment by priority based on the severity of their injuries, and the likelihood that they're going to survive them at all. When you were going forward in faith, and when you were going forward in the word, and you were trying to reach people, and you were trying to communicate with people, and you were trying to bring people to the light, ponder that principle. Spiritual triage. Why is triage necessary? Because you can't save everyone. That's going to be a hard thing for some of the Pollyannas to get their head around. You can't save everyone. Even on a secular level, you can't save everyone. Every drug addict cannot be pulled out of addiction. Every homeless, degenerate mental case cannot be brought back to functionality in a human civilization. Every domestic abuser cannot be taught the error of his ways and learn his way out of it. Every scumbag cannot be brought out of scumbaggery. You can't save everyone. That is what makes the principle of triage necessary. How does this apply to the word? In the word spiritual warfare, because that was the bullet point. An important battlefield principle as applied to spiritual warfare. Going forward, we are in a war. And I will take it back, as I always do. That little verse from Ephesians, the 6th verse from Ephesians. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. We're in a war, y'all. Title fight, knuckles up. Feel me? We're in it. So the world is that battlefield. And again, as I stated in the opener, we haven't begun to see horror yet. As you've heard me go over in the past several sermons, man, all you Christians out there that think we're oppressed. No, there's a push on to do it, but you ain't seen oppression yet, son. You ain't seen oppression yet. I tell you, people that have survived the Soviet Union where whole families got disappeared in the middle of the night because they wouldn't step off their faith. And other countries even worse. Cambodia under Pol Pot, China under Mao. They would not renounce Christ and they were killed for it. You don't know oppression yet. When you say Merry Christmas and some liberal douchebag won't answer with Merry Christmas because he wants to say Happy Holidays to virtue signal, that's not oppression, son. That's not oppression. Are they moving that direction? Yeah. Are they naked about their intent? Yeah. But you ain't oppressed yet. The world is our battlefield going forward. And we have not yet begun to see the horror of what's coming. Or what? You think me or you is necessarily going to go out in a bulletproof vest and a hail of gunfire from the minions of the Antichrist with a Crusader cross on? And no, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee of that at all. They might steal me in my sleep. Maybe my death, the way that I wind up serving the kingdom, is to stand boldly while they cut my throat while the cameras roll. Or maybe I live to a ripe old age. Who knows? I can't speak for the boss man or the carpenter kid. The point is this: the battle is not coming, it's here. And it's a battlefield principle of triage. If you are speaking for the faith, you have to be able to exercise that as a principle going forward, because not everyone can be saved. If I walk into a place Just like battlefield triage, you look at the severity of the wound and the likelihood of survival in the long term. These guys too far gone, leave them. These guys not bad enough, leave them. These guys in the middle, their priority. All right. I walk into a place and I've got my cross. I got my cross and I got my Crusader shield. And back here I got the Archangel Michael that Shauna was kind and lovely enough to gift me with. I have those out and I'm wearing a shirt that says God's children are not for sale. Whether I intended or not, I have enabled spiritual triage. What do you mean, Bart? Because there are going to be some that are going to walk up to you and be like, oh, God's children not for sale. What is this Christian bullshit, man? What kind of punk stuff? Man, there's no place for that here, man. You take that Jesus stuff back to the house. He, too far gone. Some of you out there are thinking, Bart, that's wrong, man. That's exactly the person that you need to reach. No. You remember the guy in the Satan car when I was on my way down here? What do I do for him? What do I do for him? Even if he'd have pulled over, what do I do for him? Too far gone, man. I'll pray for you. But that effort could be better spent somewhere else. This guy that comes on to me like that, man, that Jesus shit, man, just a bunch of fucking brainwashing on you. How do I know? Because I've spoken those words. Yeah, well, who are you to judge? I'm not judging, man. I'm telling you, I know from whence I speak. Somebody comes at you like that, they are too far gone. Do not waste your time and energy trying to engage. Not right now. Not right now. Some of you guys out there will disagree, but hear me out. He's too far gone. The guy that walks up to you and maybe he's drinking a beer, or maybe he's got some maybe he's got some questionable stuff on his shirt or some questionable tattoos or whatever, but he walks up to you and he shakes your hand. And he says, wow, man, I really love that shirt, bro. Where do I get that shirt? Yeah, man, you go to church? Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, this is the cross I'm wearing. It's like, yeah, man, I try to stand for Christ, but I'm pretty messed up, but I'm trying to act right, man. All right, cool, man. Can I pray with you for a minute? Yeah, cool. Take his hand, you pray with him. But he is the flesh wound guy. Is he still damaged? Yeah, he's damaged, right? Well, he's damaged a little bit. He's damaged a little bit, and he's basically walking right. So you can put him off to the side with the flesh wound guys. Guy that says, fuck Jesus, you got to push him off to the side. It's too late. He's not going to make it. And if he happens to be there once I'm done with all these other people, we'll get back to him, but he's not going to make it. Gone. This guy, flesh wound guy, put him over in the other pile. The one you got to worry about, the one that you need to focus your effort on, is the one that comes to you and he looks. And he stares at the cross and he stares at the shirt. And he looks concerned. He looks troubled. You're not obligated to reach out to him like, hey, brother, I would. You're not obligated to. It's not in some people's personality. But if I'm trying to walk in a word, especially if he comes up and he says, so God's children are not for sale. What's that about? What's that about? Or like a certain fella named David, Sonny, if you're listening, like a certain fella named David asked us once upon a time on a Sunday, how would a loving God allow, well, somebody comes at you with a question like that. Spiritual triage, that guy is priority. That guy's priority because he's seeking. He's wanting answers. He's troubled. He's lost. That is the one that you accord the most engagement and the most effort and the most resources to, because he is someone that you can save. He is someone that you can bring home. He is someone that is right there on the fence, and the deceiver has got his hooks in, and the adversary has run roughshod over this guy, and he's probably got some pain, but he's not given up. He's the priority. He's the abdominal wound. He's the internal bleeder that you can save, but you got to get on him right now, and you got to put your resources into it. Flesh wound guy, He gonna be all right. He can wait. Fuck Jesus guy, too far gone. Can't save him. Doesn't even necessarily mean he's a bad person. That's probably coming from a lot of hurt in his past too. But I cannot, as a human, if I am trying to walk in the faith and I am trying to minister and I'm trying to bring people home, I cannot waste my time engaging him right now. In fact, I may have to deal with his sin directly. Again, getting back to separating the sin from the sinner. He can bark, fuck Jesus, man, fuck your lies, devil, man, hell, Satan. Okay, cool, bro, cool. That's it. Put hands to me. Put hands to me. And you were about to get a hard lesson in how Jacob felt wrestling that angel. Ooh, slid that one under the radar, huh? But as long as his sin doesn't confront me, I don't have time for this particular sinner. Oh, you got to embrace everybody. Yeah, but not in the order in which they arrived. I got to deal with the priority case. So, guys, if you're out there, as I always pray for discernment, be able to discern and distinguish the ones who are seeking, the ones who can be saved from the flesh wounds on this side that are already walking in the light. They're already with Christ. They just got some damage they need to clean up, but they can wait. And they're going to be all right in the meantime. And on the other hand, the guy is too far gone. He ain't going to make it. It's the bleeder in the middle that you got to worry about. So I wish you strength in exercising that battlefield principle of spiritual triage in the context of the spiritual warfare that we're going to be facing going forward. Where the battlefield is going to be everything that you see around you, and where the enemy combatants can look just like your friends. Careful, because the deceiver is the father of lies, and he can mislead you just as easily as he can mislead others into opposing you. You keep your head and your heart right. Exercise that spiritual triage, because it's going to be a very vital battlefield principle going forward in this next phase, spiritual war. I want to close with a prayer. Father God, I give you thanks for your blessings. I give you thanks for the gift of this platform to be able to reach people. I give you thanks for the reach that I have, the people that I've been able to touch. I ask that you bless my words, that you let the Spirit speak through me, that I can touch those hearts and bring people home. And that even the ones that I failed to bring home, that I can at least bring them closer to the truth and steel their spines and their spirits and give them some kind of strength going forward. Because it's not a matter of faith. The dark times are coming, Lord. They are already here. They are already here. And I ask your blessings, and I pray the blood of Christ on these people who are unwilling to open their eyes and see how far gone we already are, that they will come to their senses, even though it be this late in the game, that they come to their senses. And as you say in the book of Ephesians, they will put on the full armor of God, that they will take up the scripture, they will walk in truth, they will walk in your light, that they will see the salvation that was bought with the blood of your Son, scourged and crucified, murdered horribly all those years ago to pay the price for our sins. May his blood be our strength, and may you be our fortress, our strength, and our deliverer in the battle that is to come. Pray in the name of the risen Christ. Amen. All right. I am a reverend. That is the gospel. I appreciate you guys being here, man. Stepping it up a little bit, dealing with some technical hiccups and whatnot. But we're here, and our first remote guest. Thanks, Roman, for coming on and for being not just our first guest, but kind of our lab rat. Because now that we got the process down, we can actually start interviewing some people. Hopefully, be able to expand our reach. This isn't about aggrandizing myself, man. You know, It never has been. It's been my therapy, but it's particularly not now about aggrandizing myself. It is about looking at the people that are lost and trying to bring them home. And like I said, spiritual triage. Not everybody can be saved. I'm just throwing it out there. Not everybody necessarily needs to be saved, at least in their own heads, right? I don't reject anyone just for rejecting my faith. I've got tons of people that still walk the opposite true path. This is the first year in 30 where I will not be doing a ritual on a Samhain. This is the first year in 30 where I did not spend the entire month of October without any animal flesh. It's the first year in 30 on this new path. I got to tell you, it's an odd position to be in, because I'm still mindful. I'm still mindful of the old gods. I'm still mindful of all the wisdom and strength that I learned from walking that path. But I'm walking in the light of Christ now, and it's wild, man. It's wild. Like the shift, it really is. Um, but if I can touch people, again, I would love to bring all of you to the truth in Christ. But if my walk with Christ can just bring you closer to truth, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Spiritual triage. Not everybody can be saved. But you know what? I can separate the sin from the sinner. And I know I got a lot of sinners out there that are in my corner. My sinner sisters, from day one of this thing. I got a lot of sinners that are in my corner. And you know what? Welcome. All hands on deck, man. All hands on deck. Because we are all flawed. And we are all screwed up and damaged. And all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Fall short of the grace of God, which he gave to us anyway. I'm all right with that. I'm trying to bring some people home, man. Anything I can do for that reach. I'm going to pass around that digital collection plate because I always do. I'm on PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. I don't even like reciting this stuff. I would love for this to become self-sustaining at some point. I would love to be able to minister full-time. You know what I mean? But in the meantime, it's a labor of love, and I'm out here running cranes. But if something that I offered touched you and you want to kick down a little something, I'm on Cash App, PayPal, Facebook, PayPal, Mozelle, I'm on all that. Beyond that, I understand that we're in a Biden economy and not everybody's going to be able to kick down and not everybody's going to want to, and I'm totally okay with that too. But here's what you can do for me. If you guys got your own social media platform, if you got a Twitter account, if you got a Facebook account, if you got a YouTube channel, you want to spread the word, tell people about the program. Say, man, there's fat, toothless, crippled crane operator. Every other Sunday he gets on a rants and raves for a couple of hours. Like-minded, kindred spirit. Maybe you'd like the program and just expand the reach. Like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, give me a subscription. Give me a like. Put the word out, man. Post links to the replay. That's what you can do. Help expand that reach and make this thing bigger. But here's what you can do, not just for me, but for yourself. In the meantime, between time, most importantly for yourself, for the glory of God. My boy Stone, he's always talking about live the three, the three prime directives. You got to be that signal, man. You got to be that signal that breaks through the noise. The world's all screwed up with noise right now. Signal to noise ratio is jacked. You got to be that signal that cuts through the noise, that brings the truth. You got to be that light in the darkness. They will try to crush you with darkness, tell you the darkness is all there is. They'll try to demoralize you, emasculate you, crush you with the darkness. You got to be that light that shines through, and that comes from truth. And then there is the iron rule. The iron rule. You've got to be the strength in a world full of weakness. You have got to be strong. You got to have that strength in a world full of weakness, because guess what? Without strength, none of the rest of it matters. If you're not strong, you're not going to have the strength to punch that signal through the noise. If you're not strong, you're not going to have the strength to carry that light through the darkness when it's beating you down and crushing your soul. When I'm talking about strength, I'm not just talking here. This is important. Don't get me wrong, baby. This is important. Knuckles up. But you got to be strong here and here. And sometimes here, fellas. You know what I'm talking about. So be that strength in a world full of weakness. Live the three, man. Be the example. Deacon Mark, I'm taking liberties with the quote here, but speak loudly for the kingdom. Sometimes you may even have to use words. What do you say? What did I miss here? I'll tell you what you missed. That your example should be what speaks for the kingdom. But if the example fails, be ready to let the Spirit speak through you. Give that truth to the people that need it. Separate them on the battlefield, man. Triage, baby. These guys can wait. These guys are too far gone. But those ones in the middle that are seeking, help them by your example, by your words. Bring them home. I love you guys, man. Thank you for being here. God bless, man. I'm the Reverend. That is the gospel. We'll see you next Sunday, man. Thank you all. I love you. God bless you. Peace. Stay strong, people. Big fight coming. It's here.